Hi, my name is Kayla Owens, and I'm going to be talking about gender stereotypes and inequality in the media. So, what my paper is going to be about is inequality in the newsroom and how viewers perceive different genders reporting on different news stories. So, I think these are important because young women are usually given the softer news stories because women are seen as being very compassionate and nurturing. Um, so they're often not given the harder news stories because of this, because they're put into that box. I also think this is important because viewers have become really comfortable with seeing certain genders reporting on certain news stories, such as men are usually reporting on harder news stories, such as bombings or the war or something. So I think that women and men should really be balanced and have the same opportunities as each other. Um, so my research questions were, are genders equal in the newsroom? Does gender impact who reports on certain news stories? And does a viewer trust a reporter more based on their gender? I think that these are important because it'll really allow us to see how prevalent inequality is still in the newsrooms, even though a lot of places there's a lot of equality happening because women are fighting for women's rights and all of that. I also think that it'll show how much of an impact viewers have on who gets placed in the news chair on a news channel. Um, so those are some interesting topics that I want to look into for my paper. Some significant studies that I found was one called Women in TV Broadcast News, Reporters and Sources in Hard News Stories by Mariah Irvin. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but she basically just talks about how women are often given the softer news stories, whereas men are given the harder news stories, which are more important, as I said. Well, not necessarily more important, but they're perceived as more important. And it also, she finds out that women usually feel more comfortable seeing other women reporting. Uh, and then my second study, which is called Where Men and Women Differ in Following the News by Pew Research Center. They figured out which news stories women and men generally watch, whether it be, regular news such as like CNN or Fox, or like e-news, entertainment news. So they researched that and they found out that it correlates a lot with who's reporting on those news channels. More often than not, you'll see a woman reporting on e-news than you would see a man. Uh, and then they also discussed that men and women both cover big news stories equally, yet there's still an imbalance of gender reporting these big news stories, which is interesting. And it's just, well, it's interesting. Um, so what the literature tells us is that women are being seen more as objects than they are as people, and they're being hired based on their looks and not based on their talents, whereas men don't have to look like anything to be hired. It's really just, if they're good. Uh, and then they're also given soft news stories. And the lack of hard news stories that they're giving, are being given, is kind of deterring other women from wanting to go into the field because women want to go into the field and be able to do whatever news story they want to, or they want to go into, the actual field and see what's happening during the war and stuff like that. And if they're not able to do that, I think that's why it's deterring them away from it. We also found out that women feel more comfortable seeing their own genders reporting. And we also found out that women are more compassionate, or seen as more compassionate, and men are seen as more of leaders, or stronger or more trustworthy, which I don't understand. I think that both of them uh, should be seen as equals. Women can be leaders just like men can be compassionate. So I think that soft news stories and hard news stories really need to be evened out, and you know, across the board for both of them. What we don't know is, how do we change the way women are perceived? Um, and are we too comfortable to change it? It's been like this for years and years and years. We've been seeing men report the big news and women report the little news. So is it too hard for us to change it? And instead of raising one gender above the other, is it possible that we can make men and women equals? Because in my paper, I don't want to discuss how women can be raised above men. I think that a lot of uh, today's news is showing women fighting for women's rights and feminism, and it perceives us as trying to, I don't know, become higher than the men, which I don't think is right. I think that everyone should be even. So I really want to enforce that in my paper and talk about how we can make everyone balanced. So how I'm going to build my paper is just discussing women's roles in the newsroom, the way viewers perceive women in the newsroom. Then I'm going to discuss how we can change how women are perceived and why are women perceived that way. And I really want to end with how we can make everyone balanced, and really get it so everyone gets to report on everything. And there's not this feeling of women having to report the soft news stories and men having to write the hard news stories. So that's my paper topic. Thank you for watching.